Hello you, I'm Hovakoria. Try pronouncing that. Project 4, Dimensium Creatorum. So that's the first time I've said that out loud on air. It is done. It's been done for a week. So sure enough, once again I had to take an extra week, but I only worked 2 hours a day, so it wasn't too bad. So that was supposedly my holiday week, but I had to do testing and fixing things. So I took the week after that, last week, I took it off too. Just chilling and thinking about things, including this project, Project 5, still untitled, of course. But I do know it is going to be an interactive novel. Yes, that is quite something different. Let's get to it. I've got nothing else to say about Project 4, except that it's out. There's a demo, you can try it. Links in the description. But let's jump to Project 5 then. So it's design time today. Project 5. Let's see. Nope. Is there a full screen mode in LibreOffice? I'm not sure. Look at that. Control Shift J. Brilliant. Okay, why have I not used this before? So let's do this properly this time. So interactive novel, and the genre is probably going to be about science fiction, because I like sci-fi. And let's see, themes. I've got 2 themes on my mind. So one is time. The other one is change. Time and change. Change as in the world and the lives of people and such. All right. Well, let's be specific, yes? So, what kind of ideas do I have? I have a few. First idea, this one I had months ago, which is the it's the made up, not any story, the history. Yes, so that was my initial idea. It would have gone something like this. I don't think I'm gonna make it, but here we go. So it would have been like an alien being crash landing on Earth. And then they meet some people, humans, and they're like, well, let me tell you my story. From pretty much the very beginning, all they know. And at some point it would have transformed from telling the history into telling the history of this character. Because they would have lived for thousands of years thanks to technology and stuff like that. I would kind of like that idea as a novel. Then I thought, well, how do I make it interactive? If it's stuff that's already happened, how can I make it interactive? Without making it feel weird. It's kind of weird if somebody's telling you about their past and then you can affect it somehow, but it already happened. I don't think that makes a lot of sense. Potentially it could work. Like you're the listener, you're listening to this story, and then you get to ask questions about the world, and which questions you ask reveal certain parts of the world. So you don't get the whole history, you don't get everything. And sometimes, of course, because we do have unreliable narrator who doesn't remember everything, so they might answer that I don't remember, or maybe it'll come back to me or something. So that's the only possibility, or the only possible way that this idea could work. You can't change the history, but you can change how it's being told. That also makes it a bit boring, I think, to make. And I would rather make something ambitious. Not that I have the time for that, but I always try to strive for something innovative and new and what have you. So here's the next idea. Well, okay, this is the one I've also thought about for quite a while. So it's the story of a soldier in the future, of course. So hopping from planet to planet with light speed, or even faster than that. And then, of course, as you know, time is relative, so time moves forward in hundreds of years, or at least dozens. So it's one of my favorite novels. It's called not the Infinity War, no, it's called the Forever War. I think it's from the 70s. It was written by a Vietnam War veteran. But it has this exact idea that the soldiers jump to the front, and then they fight for a few years, then they come back to Earth or to Mars or whatever. And society has changed drastically. They don't feel welcome oftentimes, and they just want to get back to the war then. It's a great novel. I don't exactly want to retread that exact idea. So I'm thinking of smaller jumps. So not hundreds of years all the time, but dozens of years. To have a little bit more of a personal relationship and smaller changes in society. So for instance, if the soldier is assigned to some backwater planet, which is probably not going to get attacked. So they might spend 5-10 years there. 5-10 years, what are they going to do? Well, might meet some people, might get into some relationships, might even start a family. But then they have to move. It gets worse for humanity. So now they are redrafting, let's say, people from retirement or whatever, and then they have to jump somewhere. And then they fight, and then they jump back, and then it's been 30 years. If they want to, they can try to follow up on that, or they can just go shrug and go about their day, do something else. So that's the interactive part, of course. You get to choose that. This is something I really like. This is something I don't see very often. Like in the beginning, if you have a very young character, they're kind of naive. So certain options are open to them. But then when things start happening to that character, certain options, they drop out. You can't pick them anymore. And let's say your choices might become more and more bitter or even nihilistic or something like that, depending on what happens to this character. And that's also good for rereadability. Because I'm not a big fan of a non-linear story tree. Let's see if I can find a picture of this. There we go. So this is a very usual way of making a non-linear story or an interactive story. So the author, they think of a beginning, they think of an end, and then from every kind of event or every paragraph or every chapter, so these could be individual chapters, let's say that's the case. So after every chapter, the reader gets to choose which is the next chapter. Well, this kind of has some recursion here, going backwards. So it's not the best picture. Oh, gee, I can make it myself. Come on. Okay. Anyways, that is a very traditional non-linear story structure. So you have the first chapter, then you get to choose, let's say, what the protagonist is going to do next. So you could choose this chapter or this one, and then after them after the second chapter you chose, you get another choice. In this case, both of these tier 1 or tier 2 chapters can lead to the same one or a different one, and then lastly they all lead to the same ending. Now of course there could be multiple endings too. I mean, it's kind of weird that they all lead to the same ending. So we could have this kind of a situation. So in this case you always get the same ending, but here you either based on a choice or based on this choice here, you could get a different ending. Something like this. So it's like a, I don't know the technical term, but it's like a forward or a one directional tree. So this is very traditional. It's also very boring. So I'm not going to make it like this. Parts of it, there we go, now it peaks. So parts of the story can certainly be like this. So this could be like if we're talking about this story, so this could be on one of the planets or one of the moons. You always get the same thing. Let's say based on some criteria. So if you are, let's say, over 60 years old and you go to this moon, then you get this non-linear story every time. So that's a possibility there, but I don't want the whole structure to be like this. It's been done to death. Okay. So I'm going to talk about the because I feel this is a very likely candidate for what I'm going to go with. So I'm going to explain the structure later. Let's see, I've got other ideas. So this is based on a short story I read some time ago. So it's another alien. In the short story, this alien had been on Earth for, it was either hundreds of years or thousands of years. But the thing is, they lost contact to their resupply ships. So probably over that time period, their faction or even their race had gone extinct. Or potentially they just cut funding to this mission and kind of forgotten him there on Earth. So that's why he was running out of supplies and then decided to just come clean and tell a certain journalist, spill the beans and share his knowledge with humans. Because he had videos and pictures and a whole lot of data about human history. So that was the short story. So what I could make is the stuff before that. From getting the assignment, flying to Earth, landing in Antarctica. So you get to choose what to do, and you can hibernate if there's nothing going around and so on. And then maybe the mission ends, or maybe the resupply ship doesn't arrive anymore, so maybe it ends the same way as the short story. Maybe you get to choose, maybe you can just choose to, let's say, hibernate for another 1,000 years and then you never wake up or something. Or take your own life. This is a very simple story. So it would be quite easy to make. I would just have to make it interesting by writing interesting stuff about human history, which would be quite an interesting research task, quite frankly. And that way I would get to tell history and have interactivity and have that moment-to-moment interactivity, which this idea kind of lacks. And history is interesting. I am interested in history, so maybe this idea is better than I thought. And it also doesn't have the structure of it is not like this. It could be like this, of course, but I wouldn't make it like this. Okay. Now, of course, I could mix this idea with the first idea. So instead of having this alien land on Earth, they could land on an alien planet. So it could be completely made up. Is that more interesting or less interesting? It would take less research, of course. But oh man, yeah, I quite like this idea now. But let's just write the alternative here. So this could go in all sorts of strange directions. Yeah. Now the kind of problem I have, it's not really a problem. I like ambition, as like I said, but it is. I always think about the background systems. So civilizations. So at this point, I would like to simulate a galaxy in a very, very basic way, having these factions fight over planets, and then you don't actually see that, you just read reports of it, and you might get stuck on a planet that's been invaded, something like that. So I would like to, in this idea specifically, it doesn't really fit the other ideas that well. It kind of fits this one. Yeah, okay, so that's part of, it's kind of a similar structure. But it would fit this one really well. And then the story would never really end. Except if you got killed or captured and killed later or retired. Okay, so they always do end. Yeah, and it would still be an interactive novel because the simulation is very simple. It's not really the point. The point is what do you do and what kind of prose does it generate for you. So once again. So this one has prose generation. This one doesn't really need it. This one also has it. I'm not gonna make this one. No. Maybe one of these. Now I'm not exactly sure. I had an idea. This is a very annoying thing. I had an idea some days ago. Like that. That's good. I'm gonna bring that up Monday. I don't remember it anymore. So it might have been this one, but I'm not sure. So that's unfortunate. Let's see if I can come up with yet another one, because it's about time and change. Time and change. These are all pretty high-level ideas, in my opinion. They don't really get to the nitty-gritty of, let's say, dialogue. They would mostly be about, you know, this character talks to this one, they talk about this, and such and such. It wouldn't be about the actual dialogue. What do they say? Because that is something that would take way too much time. If we are talking about, well, if one of the themes is time and change and going forward in time by decades and what have you. But you know, change, time, they it's not just the big picture, it's also about small changes. Time goes on all the time. No surprises there. So it could be a more relatable story. For instance, friendships, they don't uphold themselves. So if you don't meet somebody for a few years, that does affect your relationship. It goes a bit cold. So that's another idea when it comes to change. But I'm not sure if that really, like at that point I would need some kind of an AI. Because once again, I don't want this. If you want believable human interactivity in an interactive story, the easiest way to achieve that is with a dialogue tree or with a story tree. Because then you can make sure that every single branch makes sense. But at the same time, if you have a lot of, let's say you have a project where you end up having 10 discussions with this person, let's say 5, okay? Because this number is going to blow up. So 5 trees. Now, of course, if I want this to be a novel and not a short story, then each one of those discussions has to be massive. How many chapters do you have in a novel usually? 10, 20? So if we had 10 discussions, each one would be a chapter, and each one would be, let's say, a year or 2 apart. And then you would have to reconnect in the beginning of the discussion and then choose what to talk about. And you could choose not to reveal things, and you could you could try to be friends with them or whatever, you could trust them, but then they would have changed. Well, that kind of an idea, the problem is that even if I make the first discussion very interesting, now I have a lot of potential. Well, basically the other person now could have all sorts of opinions about you based on what you chose. And they should remember that stuff, and they should be able to reference it later. So if I'm trying to make the second discussion as a tree as well, now I need to have multiple beginning nodes, and I need to change these well, now they're not chapters, they are, let's say, sentences. So now I would have to go in and really think hard about which sentences make sense based on which beginning, based on what they know. I need to add a lot of checks, conditional checks here. Maybe some of these connections aren't available based on what you said previously. And it's doable. It's certainly doable, but it's a massive task. And I don't think, like, personally, that idea to begin with doesn't quite interest me. Like, it's relationship drama. I don't think I can write that for a start. I'm not an experienced writer. Something I forgot to mention in the beginning is that I've only ever released one interactive short story, and even that is slightly unfinished. I had a few ideas on how to finish it, but I never got around to it. And then on top of that, I have a few prototypes, but they are most certainly unfinished, and I've never released any of them. So I'm not an experienced writer, so this is going to be already tough because of that. And that's why I would like to keep the level of the writing, let's say. I would like to keep it rather abstract. Abstraction also allows for that for generating some prose. Which, well, I guess we should get to. So that idea, well, I explained it. I'm not going to write it down. I'm not going to do it. Let's see. Well, there's Lazarus Long. It's a series of science fiction novels by Heinlein. Now I forget his forename. Robert Anson Heinlein. Yeah, so he had a series. I've read the 2 first ones. They're pretty good. I should read the rest of them. The idea in that series is that there is a group of people, a sizable group of people with genes for long life. So they live, rather than 70 years, they live 200, 300, 400 years. And then there's one individual who calls himself Lazarus Long, who basically never dies out of old age. So he has the best genes possible for long life. And the whole series, at least up to the, well, at least the second book. The first one is a rather traditional kind of adventure, escaping Earth and going to a few planets. But the second one is the frame story, or I hope that's the correct term. The idea is that he has lived so long that he wants to die. And then his descendants want to stop him from killing himself. And they just tell stories about things, or he tells stories about his long life. And, you know, they're pretty interesting. He ends up doing a lot of different types of things, of course, because that's the whole point. He thinks he's done everything. And then they try to help him do something new because they don't want him to die, because he has the genes, well, he's a valuable person to begin with. He's known all around the world by them. It's kind of, the long-living people is a bit of an analogy to, well, certain minorities, let's say, of how they are treated, because they're different. They're so different. So that is, of course, rather specific, but it can be, because it's not interactive. It's just an ordinary novel. And of course by Heinlein, who was a pretty good writer by the end. But I'm not going to be able to use that in any way, shape or form. Yes, one more possibility could be like some kind of a story about a god. And you would get to be this god, of course. So you would get to choose when to create and what. And then if there's some life on that planet or in the place, then what do you do with it? Do you help them? Do you not help them? Yeah, kind of like the Futurama episode, where Bender gets to be a god of his own little world. Kind of stuck here. Surprisingly, I like this idea quite a bit. Yes, because I could mix it with this. Yeah. So instead of having a soldier fighting a war, it would be a spy. Because that's the one issue with this. The original idea for this came from a battle system. So I thought about this very compelling battle system where you fly around in space and fight these aliens. And then I thought, well, I want to have a dynamic campaign where the aliens are fighting our planets and we have to defend them, and they might take over a planet and we might take over a planet, and then it ends either in humans winning or it ends in the aliens winning. Great. Well, how about a third thing? How about between the missions, between the battles, you get this non-linear story, or this interactive story rather. So you are one of the soldiers, so you get to do, what do you do now? You're assigned here for a year. You're defending this planet if they attack again. You're rebuilding it, you're doing these things. But they could be done in text. And then you would get to, let's say, meet people and maybe start a family, and then you would be assigned somewhere else, so you could come back, and then things have changed. So it would be like an additional thing in that project, which is a much bigger project, of course, because it's 3 different parts. It would be the battle system, it would be the dynamic campaign, and it would be this. So that's where it started, that's why it was a soldier. But the problem is, for this project, of course, is the battles. I don't want to mess with any battle systems. And it's kind of boring to always say, oh, there was a battle and you didn't die. Because what if you die? Then it's completely out of your control. Then that's that's annoying. It's like the reader, I'm just gonna say player, a bit of a cheat. The player is already looking forward to where they're gonna go next, and they're gonna come back and stuff. They're making plans, and then there's a battle. They don't have any input, and they died. Whoop-de-doo. I think, yep. Now it's coming together. It's coming together. So this idea with a spy, and it could be an alien spy. It could be about alien civilizations. Because this, once again, it's one of the reasons why why the creatures in Dimensium Creatorum, why they look like this. If they look like humans, if they look like people, then they should behave like people. But because they look like this, they can behave in weirder ways, let's say. So I'm going to mix those ideas. Let's do that. I mean, this is not a bad idea either, but I'm a bit hesitant to do it because it is pretty much, the idea is lifted from the short story. You're a spy, you start out fresh from the academy. This is like in a 4X title. You can train spies and then send them around. And you never hear their stories. Like, how dangerous was it, and what did they do, and if they got caught, then why was that? And that's why I usually, if you ask me, I prefer to simplify spying to a few numbers, just like Master of Orion 1. But for instance, Master of Orion 4, which is very average, but I played it for a while, you get to train individual agents. And they have a face, and they have a name. Well, I guess the name was like Alpha and Bravo and stuff like that. Then you send them to a mission, and they might get caught, and then you see in the icon is like they're behind bars, and then they might get executed, or you might trade for them or something. And that's just a waste of time, because you don't get any benefit from that compared to numbers. Why not just have them as numbers, and then the number goes down if they get caught? That's it. Why is the face there? Because they're not telling any stories. I'm not invested in these faces and names at all. But anyways, that was a tangent. So in this idea, you get to live the life of one of these agents. That's kind of nice. I like that idea. So I'm gonna do it. I can use a lot of creativity when it comes to these civilizations. Maybe I could do some generation, some procedural generation this time. So in Project 4, I randomly generated the visuals and the names of those characters. And now I could actually use some procedures to get a little bit of variety, just a little bit, because of course the more variety you have, the harder it is to match the prose to that. So I know this from experience, because one of those prototypes that I talked about, one of them was very, very ambitious. So basically simulating, I started with the battle simulation, so I made that mistake there. So it actually simulated like all the positions, people would move on a grid and they would attack one at a time, and they would have some abilities they could use. And then I tried to write a prose generator that looks at the current situation and the history of the battle and what the character sees and what the character is doing, and takes all that data and spits out some prose that makes sense. And that was just a dreadful task. I don't think I managed it very well. I had something, I had a prototype by the end of it. I think I spent a month on it. But I mostly came away from that prototype, or that test, or that idea. I came away with the knowledge that it's really difficult. It's easy to just list things. This attacked that. This moved here. Yeah, you pick up this weapon. You throw this. It misses. You dodge this. Like, that is easy. But that's not prose. That's just a list of things that happened. You know, that's the history of this very specific battle. But it's not a plot. It's not something you want to really read and have a good time with. It's very utilitarian. So I don't want that. And that's why, if I'm going to have some generation here, it's going to be very simple. It's going to be just a few variables, so that I can have pre-written prose and have a few conditional statements in there to change a few things. So for instance, you could have a civilization that is more democratic and more kind of with more individual freedoms. And then you could have a civilization which is more authoritarian, with less freedoms. Maybe that's a sliding scale. Maybe there are like 4 possibilities or 5 possibilities. So very, very much freedom of individuals. Quite a bit of freedom, some corruption. Kind of in the middle. And then mostly no freedoms, and then totally no freedoms. People are just slaves or whatever. Like, so it could be like every civilization has that one variable, which goes from +2 to -2. And then I can check that variable when I'm writing prose. I can change things. So if you're moving around from city to city, then it might be really difficult if you're in +2, or if you're in -2, that is. If you're in +2, it's really easy. Nobody's checking anything. Or maximum individual freedoms in this society. So you rarely get checked for anything. While in a completely authoritarian society, you would get checked all the time. Which makes spying difficult. But it also makes that society less effective and more susceptible to rebellion. So that might be your mission. Your mission is to incite rebellion. But you might get caught. If you talk to the wrong kind of people, you might get caught. So let's think about that for a while. So what is the structure going to be? Well, like I said, I would like a dynamic campaign, which is going to complicate things a lot. But I can design it in a way that I don't actually need it. Okay, so let's have that as a nice to have. That's another nice to have thing. Yeah, that's why it doesn't need to be dynamic, because your life is probably going to be pretty short. And oh man, now this is reminding me of one of my other older prototypes. Let's not go there, because I might still finish that. It's a completely different kind of idea, though. The only shared aspect is that you're an agent who can work for different factions, and they're dynamic and stuff like that. Kind of like what is it called now? Drox Operative. Wow, I haven't played that in a while. Mostly because it's an action RPG. But it's set in space! And it has some very nice dynamic features. You get to do missions for anybody. You can choose who to work for. And mostly it's about clicking and, you know, destroying mobs and collecting gear and, you know, improving your Drox Operative ship. Things are coming back. I had no recollection of that before just now. So that's nice. Yeah, that's a good one. My favorite from that specific developer, whose name Soldak Entertainment, maybe. Let's see. This is not very important, but small independent company founded by Stephen Peeler in 2004. Yes, it's these people, or this person. I guess. Most of the other titles are fantasy or zombies by the looks of it. I didn't really like any of them, but Drugs Operative, that one tickled my fancy. Okay, then you. Whoops. Yeah, I don't like you. You do what do you want to do? You do this. You do that. I really don't like that pattern in interactive storytelling. Quite a few people do it, but I don't like it. It feels really weird to me. In fact, I'm pretty sure I haven't told this story before, but it's not really my story. So I read a book. It was an utterly forgettable. It was like a post-apocalyptic something. I didn't like it at all. I didn't like the style. I didn't like the characters. But I kept reading it. I was like, I'm gonna go through 3-4 chapters, and then I'm gonna conclude if I wanna go through with it. But about in the 3rd chapter, all of a sudden it said, "You look at this character. You listen to this character. This character turns to you and tells you." In a novel, it just creeped me out, quite frankly. It's so weird. Like, that's the only time I've seen it. Trying to put the reader in the story like that. It's really weird. In non-interactive media. In interactive media, it's bearable, but I find it weird. Because I don't want to be in the world. It's not me. Especially now, in this one. This isn't a human. It's not a human spy, it's an alien spy. Who has their own internal view of the world. And their own internal traits. And that's also why I'm not going to use you, because then it's going to feel weird. For instance, if terrible things happen to this agent, right off the bat, they get tortured multiple times or something, that is going to affect them. But it doesn't affect you. You might still want to, try, take risks and what have you, but the character doesn't want to do that. The choices the character gives themselves are very safe. For a while at least. And they're gonna justify it. Of course. So that's also why I want the character to have a name. And I want you to move a character. Choose for the character. But not for yourself. Right, that was another tangent. AWOL. Away without official leave. I don't think that's the right term here. Missing in action. Whatever. Let's use it. Right. So spreading rumors or false information, etc. etc. Or not. Yeah, that's about it. Oh, and then there's the kind of, Of course, that's a big deal. But that's gonna be less of a big deal than in the soldier idea. Because it's kind of not your job, really. And it might make it more difficult. Oh dear. Yeah, it might make it more difficult for the agent. It will make it more difficult for me as a developer and as a writer. But this is it's a very broad idea, and I think it's going to be very easy to add things to this. Once again, I do have a system. I guess I can mention the other project then. This one. It has the most boring tagline of them all. Yeah, it doesn't look that amazing. Can I go full screen? I can go full screen. That's something I should fix. It should load everything before you start, not when you start. Simon decides to take the offer as he's due for a vacation anyway. So here I of course use, it's not you. You're not in this world, it's Simon. The trip to Hilland has never been pleasant. The roads are even worse off than the last time Simon travelled in this direction years ago. Nature is as pleasant as before though. Some in the city has its perks, but this is something else. Merrick is already at the gate waiting when Simon arrives. And then finally we get a little bit of, well, finally, that was the intro. It's nothing compared to a novel. They take good care. So there we go, a few choices. But this is, of course, this is kind of like having a discussion. Let's go like that. For me, the appraisal is not that important. What if he was onto something, alchemically speaking? Don't be silly. We'll see. It's a double job. Right. So in this story, the structure is kind of cyclical. So this is where the first day starts, and then every day you get to choose what to do. So I could rest through the whole thing, and if you want to, you can go and do that. I'm not going to spoil it. But it's kind of, there's a day cycle, and then depending on which day it is, different options open up here. And the system I have, it's a data-driven system. It makes it really easy to add things. So to this story, I could add, if I want on day 5, if I want a very specific thing to happen, I can add that data file, say that, oh, if day is 5, and if you've done this thing in the past, and if you didn't oversleep, then this can happen, for instance. So it's really easy to add those sort of things. So when it comes to this spy idea, or this agent idea, it's kind of similar. So there's a set amount of planets. I can say, based on the age of the spy, or the year, or the current year, or you know, who is in charge of the planet. I can use all of that data to choose what happens next. What happens when you arrive? What happens when you try to do this or that? What happens whenever? But it is a bit different. It is a bit different than this. Anyways, if you're interested, go read it. It's rather short. And it has some readability value. Wow. That term will not catch on. I'll need to think of a better one. I mean, replayability isn't bad, of course, because you play it. It's an interactive novel, sure, you read it, but you also play it, because playing is such a general term for any kind of interactive thing. You can play it. Right. Yeah, I don't think I need these. Now that I think about it. I like it. It's easy to add stuff. It's easy to start writing. I can just write whatever comes to my mind, all sorts of possibilities. Just come up with whatever, and then when I start implementing it, I'll go through and implement the more important things first. And for instance, if we have on each planet we have that one variable, then if it's a +2 planet, then it might have like festivals and amusement parks and a lot of cultural things. And then if it's -2, it's just drudgery and work, and you are forced to work somewhere and stuff like that. And security checkpoints everywhere. And if there's a war going on, that's another variable. If there's a war going on, that affects things too. So things like basic resources might be rationed, and there are more checks in place to check for spies, for instance. So yeah, there are only a handful of variables. Let's write that down. Free trade, stuff like this. They can have some effects. Then there are the agent could have very basic things like strength, agility, dexterity, etc. So these only affect the missions, and these, I think these are optional. I'm not going to start with those. I'm going to add them only if I can think of good reasons for these values. Because memories are more important. So I want to base the future actions of the agent on what they've done before, not necessarily on their innate traits or something, because it doesn't really matter. Your strength, does it really matter in the future that much? I'm not sure how the missions are made though. Should they be abstract? I think they're going to be abstract too, at least in the beginning. Right, so that's that's how it's going to begin. Yep. What are variables? There's a difficulty, location, of course, type, so all of that stuff, and then duration, time of day, stuff like that. Okay, so how about the agent? It could also be kind of, so let's just put in a few from the from project 4. Well, that's all of them. But what else? What else? Like daring. Daring. So the opposite of daring is then not daring, as in playing itself, as in conservative, as in, there's a word for that, I forget. So age affects performance in the end, and it also affects retirement. but also, you know, suspicion. If you're really old, you're less suspicious because you don't seem like an agent. Is it really like that? Yes, it is like that. Okay, cool. It's halfway there. Not at all. It's the writing is going to be the big part here. If I drop these, and I will, then the writing is only affected by these variables. This is the hard one, because the system I have, it doesn't actually support generating variables on the fly, as far as I remember. So per planet, that's going to be kind of difficult. And also, if the planets can change owners, that's going to be even more difficult, because certain things don't change, like some locations might not change, but then the government changes completely. The level of unrest changes. So that's an important variable. Should I draw a picture? Let's see what's going to be in it. Well, I might as well. Okay, so not like this. So the structure is going to be like this. Oh. This is how the system works. So there's going to be a bunch of actions in a pool. Let's say 4. Then you get an event. And the event then can check for certain variables. Yes. So it says that, hey, look through this pool of actions with all the variables in the world. So all those things are listed. Which planet we are on, and if it's martial law or not, and if the character is old or young or experienced or whatever. And then it's gonna figure out that these 2 actions apply. And then you get to choose between those 2. You don't get these because, let's say this action is only for a planet at peace, and this planet is not at peace, it's under martial law, so it doesn't apply. Then this, you choose one of these, it modifies the world. Let's add it here. It modifies the world variables. Fetches actions from the pool. Then it modifies the world. And then we get another event. That's it. That's it. So there's an event pool too. Okay, that's the whole thing. There's no full screen. There's no full screen. So that's about it. That is annoying. So we get the very first event, which is going to be like, oh, your agent training is about over. There's just going to be an interview. And then based on, let's say, which faction you're working for, that might affect the actions the interview event fetches. And then they're like, well, like, what is your plan? How long do you want to work? And then you get like, oh, all my life, or just a few years, I need some money or whatever. And then they might become a bit suspicious of you right away and not send you to a mission of high importance. So if you choose the one that I'm just going to work for 10 years and make some money and then buy the farm, then that might add a variable to the world, which is like supervisor, or the master is unhappy, or master is suspicious, goes up by 1. Or they remember that it could be a very specific variable, like you told the master that you only want to do this for 10 years. It could be like that. Why not? And then potentially in one of the events or one of the actions in the future, we can check for that variable, which was set in the very first event. And that's fine. I can do it, and it doesn't break. It just works, which is why I like this system. And it might be the very next action, quite frankly, because if the interview continues, then based on your previous answer, you might get a different event next. So it might be like, are you sure? Like, we would prefer you to work for longer or something like that. And then the whole thing begins. There could be some custom logic here when choosing the next mission, for instance, or the next planet you go to. There could be custom code which does that, and then this system just calls that custom script. And then it pukes out the next event, or sets the next planet. Then we check where to go, which is the next event. So that would be the you prepare for a planetfall or something event. And then it happens. And you might get caught immediately because, hey, it's risky. Should work. The planet memories are the only ones I'm worried about, because they have to be added dynamically. But if I only have, let's say, I only have 6 planets, let's say 2 from each faction. So this could be like a corner. There are no corners in space. But this could be a place where there are 6 planets really close to each other, and they are all owned by different factions. And that's why there's this uneasy piece there. But of course, everybody's spying all the time, trying to find an advantage, take over one of the planets. So that could be the backstory, because it would simplify things. And I need simplicity, because I'm only going to work on this for 2 months. That's not a lot of time. Yeah, that's an idea worth keeping. But if there are only 6 planets, that's gonna solve the problem, because then I can just script those variables in there. Planet 1, this, planet 2, this, planet, and then I can remember who owns the planets, even if they can't change. If they can change, that's another complication. But I can figure it out, of course. I would prefer a solution which improves the system and modifies the system and makes it more robust. Well, adds more features at least. But I can always have custom code per project, because maybe future projects don't need something like that. So just build something custom. And if they do need it, then I can translate that custom system into a more general system. That's how usually software is developed. You don't necessarily start by making a very generic system. You start with something specific. And you see if it's even useful. Sometimes that happens. You think, oh, we totally need this, and then you try it out, and no, we don't really need it. So it would have been a shame to waste time building a very complicated, robust generic system with tests and all that in, and then you realize it was kind of an unnecessary feature. Projects and schedule. Did this really happen? So I had 2 weeks of polish, then an extra week. 15. Yeah, that's true. Okay, so I released it at 15th. Cool. So this was a holiday week. There we go. So now we are here, 24. Start with the stream. Prototype. I'm not going to make a prototype. I'm going to switch things up. Well, let's see how many weeks do I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, so let's say estimated 10 weeks. So I'm not going to make a prototype. So what I'm going to start with is writing. Well, this was design. Today I'm not going to do anything more today. So this is then design plus writing. for the rest of the week. Gold, I like that. Okay, so I'm going to do that for 2 weeks. And maybe at that point I should make a prototype. Maybe that's clever. That's a clever thing, because I need to know before I actually start writing things, I need to know how the memory stuff, how those planets are gonna work. I need to make some kind of thing. So at this point, I guess this is all alpha, right? I'm gonna do the prototypes later, which is weird. Writing, more writing. Oh. And I'm not sure if that's going to be a public prototype or not. But I can have a stream at that point. Maybe a stream at this point. Oh. I can't have a question mark there. Right. But alpha is... This is the wrong way around. But whatever. I'm breaking all the rules. Because alpha is supposed to be feature complete. But if I'm just going to be making a prototype and writing, I don't have the features complete at that point. But I can switch it around. So it's basically going to be content first. And then the features. Oh wait, is this release already? Oh. Because I don't even need audio. I need some audio, I guess, maybe some background music. Okay, let's say this is audio. Gee. All right. So what do I do? Oh, do we have full screen here? We do. Yikes, I should have done that. Design and writing. Yes, writing. What do I do with these 3 weeks? Well, basically, it's implementing all of it. That's it. That's it. Oh, now the full screen is not so great. So copy that. That's it. Wow, this is even simpler than before. Let's stream there. These dates never stick, by the way. I end up going somewhere and then I forget and what have you. All right. Well, I'm really glad. I was unsure. I had options, and now 2 of the options merged together pretty well. Let's change that to research plus writing. Research of style and architecture, why not? History. Because I need to make up stuff. I need to base it on something. Oh, and of course the most important, etc. Brilliant. So now I know what to do. So I was getting a bit soft, I have to admit. Taking kind of 2 weeks off. I was getting a bit soft. I was feeling like my life had no purpose. Which is not true, but that's what happens when, well, at least to me, when I work for a long time, and well, 2 months, and then I take some time off. And I relax, and then I relax a bit too much, and I start feeling a bit itchy about doing something productive. Here I am, doing something productive. Okay, 5 more minutes. Oh, I'm just gonna wrap this up. So this is an interesting project for me, of course. The 5th one of the year. And once again, I try to make a different type of interactive project. So this one only being text. And it's something I've had on my mind for a long time. And if I manage to simplify it, I might even finish it. I need to forget simulations. I need to forget dynamic stuff. If I forget all that, I can get it done smoothly. And then I can add things later if I really feel like it. You know, time and change. Maybe the themes kind of dropped out too. The time idea might still be there, so that if you travel light speed, things change. Oh, that's the thing. Information is old. Right, I've made a project about this before, but that was just about sending ships to planets with old information. So you had to look forward. But these are things, societal change might happen kind of quickly. So the information a faction has about this planet, where they're sending you, is 20, 30 years old. Now that is certainly exactly the kind of complication that I didn't want. Maybe I'll have to cheat in that regard. And have traveling to be only light speed, but information to be faster than light. Maybe it's quantum communication. Maybe that's it. Oh, of course, that's it. Okay, there we go. Crisis averted. I don't need to take that into consideration. I can have everything I want and not any of the baggage I don't want. Quantum communication, because that's encrypted too. You can't tamper with it. If you tamper with it, both parties notice it, and then they just disregard whatever. Very productive 2 hours there. That of course means I need to edit the 2-hour video down. That's gonna be, well, 4 hours or something crazy. It's unfortunate, but at least I get to go through all of it again. Really think about it and get some more ideas. I'm positive I can finish this. Unlike Project 3. Thank you for watching. Farewell.